car built to win. And built to be unlike anything else on the grid. Not a louder version of what everyone else had. Not a safer bet. Not a cautious step forward. Mazda needed something new. Something compact. Something that screamed at 9,000 RPM. What they produced was the 787B, a machine that turned the rules, the skeptics, and the giants of endurance racing on their heads. A car's job is simple. Cover distance faster than everyone else, for longer than anyone else can keep going. Mazda built a car to do exactly that. A car to burn rivals on pace and outlast them on fuel and reliability. They did it with a design nobody else used at the top level. A high-revving 4-rotor Wankel engine and a chassis tuned for corner speed and endurance finished Le Mans in first place on June 23, 1991. A raw, improbable victory that still echoes through motor racing history. In the late 1980s, Mazda was not a dominant global motorsport conglomerate. It was a company known for stubborn engineering choices. Above all, the rotary engine. For decades, Mazda had stuck with the Wankel because it offered something piston engines did not: a compact, lightweight power unit with a superb power-to-weight ratio and the ability to rev like a motorcycle. That faith paid off extensively in smaller classes. RX-7s and rotary GT cars scored countless class wins and championships in IMSA and other series, giving Mazda credibility on the track even while conventional wisdom shrugged at the rotary. But to fight for overall wins at Le Mans and the World Sports Car Championship, Mazda had to scale that advantage up and solve the very problems other engineers used to dismiss the rotary: sealing, fuel use, heat management, and emissions. In short, they needed to make the rotary not only fast, but durable and efficient for 24 hours. The 787B was the answer to that challenge. Mazda's rotary story begins in the 1960s. The Cosmosport brought rotary power to production cars, and Mazda doubled down on the format through the 1970s and 1980s. On track, the RX-7 dominated GT and touring classes around the world. The car was cheap to modify, produced big power for its size, and won class championship after class championship in IMSA's GTU/GTO categories and national series. Those successes kept Mazda's motorsport program alive and convinced the company that the rotary, if engineered correctly, could scale to prototypes. Mazda Speed, the racing arm that would build the 787/787B program, had accumulated decades of endurance know-how. They knew how to extract reliability from small, unusual packages. That background proved crucial when the decision was made. Rather than build a conventional piston prototype to chase F1-derived engines, Mazda would bet on the rotary and refine it until it was a genuine endurance tool. Mazda's prototype evolution was iterative and brutal. Early 4-rotor attempts, designs labeled 13J, 13G, and others, were promising on paper but fragile in practice. By the late 1980s, engineers had a list of demands: more power, better torque spread, lower fuel consumption for fewer pit stops, and rock-solid reliability at high revs. The answer was not a single trick, but thousands of small changes. Redesigns of intake geometry, ignition, materials, cooling, and control systems. Continuously variable length intake horns, a linear, continuously variable intake system that optimized torque at mid-range and power at high revs, giving useful drivability over a huge RPM band. A highly refined engine management and ignition system, including a 3-plug-per-rotor ignition design that improved combustion and fuel efficiency while taming detonation and emissions. These changes pushed the racing rotary from a temperamental curiosity into a 700-horsepower, endurance-capable engine. At the center of the 787B is the R26B, a 4-rotor Wankel that, in race trim, produced roughly 700 PS, around 690 to 700 bhp, and a torque figure in the ballpark of the high hundreds in Newton-meter imperial numbers, depending on the tuning. Each rotor was 654 cubic centimeters in geometric displacement, and the overall FISA reciprocating equivalent for regulatory purposes was much larger, a quirk that figures strongly in the later regulatory debate. The engine loved revs and made its best power near 9,000 RPM. Mazda deliberately limited redline and tuned fueling to ensure the engine could survive 24 hours of racing. The rotors are small, and the whole engine is shorter and lighter for its output than a comparable V engine. That lets designers centralize mass and run lower polar inertia for the chassis. For its physical size, the R26B produced extraordinary output, allowing lightweight and better braking, cornering performance. Fewer reciprocating parts means fewer valve trains, fewer cams, and different failure modes. If engineered correctly, that can translate into simplicity and reliability rather than fragility. But rotaries also have well-known drawbacks. Historically poor fuel economy, higher oil consumption, and sealing issues, apex seal wear, that made many manufacturers avoid the architecture for mainstream cars. Engineering at Mazda Speed attacked those problems at the component level. Materials, sealing geometry, cooling paths, and lean combustion strategies were all tuned to reach an acceptable balance of efficiency and longevity. The result was a rotary that could run all night at Le Mans. The chassis was a Kevlar/carbon composite monocoque. Suspension was double wishbone with pull rod/rocker actuation and inboard dampers, and stopping power came from carbon brakes and a triple-plate carbon clutch. Mazda's philosophy for the 787B emphasized cornering speed and fuel economy over terminal velocity. Its aero delivered high downforce for the sweeps and technical sections, meaning that on a 24-hour circuit, those attributes gained more time than top-end horsepower. On paper, the 1991 field looked stacked against a small Japanese prototype. Sauber Mercedes, the C11, arrived with blistering single-lap pace. Jaguar and Peugeot were fielding potent new 3.5-liter prototypes. Porsche customer teams littered the grid. Many expected the big European constructors to dominate. In practice, Le Mans that year was chaotic. The new 3.5-liter formula had mixed entries and reliability problems for several frontrunners. Mazda's strategy, efficiency, reliability, and steady, fast stints placed the 787B in the spotlight when others failed. The Mercedes team led for much of the day but encountered mechanical problems that opened the door for Mazda. Mazda entered 3 cars, but the race favorite slot was nowhere near them. The renowned liveried number 55, the car we remember, climbed through the field from a modest grid position by combining clean driving, fewer stops, and fewer mechanical issues. Through night and day, the 787B's engine screamed, but its pit stops were measured and efficient. When the Sauber Mercedes that had been leading developed overheating and mechanical trouble in the final hours, Mazda took over and, against odds, took the flag after completing 362 laps of the Sarthe. The car required very little more than fuel, tires, and a few strategic nose-wing changes, a statement about the quality of its endurance engineering. Johnny Herbert, Volker Weidler, and Bertrand Gachot, all 3 had formula-level backgrounds, and they executed long, disciplined stints. Herbert's recollections underline the mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. He remembers the sound of the rotary echoing around the stands and the moment a rival's failure handed Mazda a shot at history. The teamwork and strategy, and the car's ability to stay on track, mattered as much as outright lap time. Nobody believed the rotary would ever be a serious threat at the top level. It was laughable to many. The Le Mans win was equal parts engineering breakthrough and the collapse of rival fortune.